She leaned in close, like she was about to tell me a joke. But what came out wasn't a joke. You should get a test, she whispered. Her blood type doesn't match yours. My ex-wife said it like she was handing me a grocery list, calm, casual, like she wasn't detonating my entire life. And she said it at our daughter's 5th birthday party. My name is Daniel. And that was the moment I stopped knowing what Dad meant. Let me back up, not all the way, just enough to explain what came before the wreckage. I met Jessica in college. She had this wildfire kind of energy, never still, always in motion, always laughing at things nobody else noticed. She smelled like eucalyptus and old books. We fell hard, the way young people do, all heat and no caution. We got married straight out of school. Too fast, maybe, but we were in love. Or at least we said we were, and sometimes that's close enough to start. 3 years in, things got hard. Not explosive, not dramatic. Just worn down. She'd shut down. I'd work longer hours. We tried therapy, tried dating again, even bought a dog like that would fix the silence between us. Nothing stuck. Then one day, she sat across from me at breakfast, hands wrapped around her mug, and said she was pregnant. I remember the look on her face. Half joy, half fear. I got up, walked around the table, kissed her forehead, and said, "We're gonna figure this out." Because that's what I do. I figure things out. 9 months later, Hannah was born. She came into the world at 3:17 in the morning, screaming like a fighter, full head of dark hair, wrinkled little fists, and these blue eyes that didn't match either of ours. But the nurse said that was normal. Said baby eye color changes, don't overthink it. So I didn't. I held her. I whispered, "Hi, it's me. I'm your dad." And something cracked open in my chest, something that hadn't opened in years. Jessica cried. I did too. And for a while, it felt like we were going to make it. But time has a way of showing what love was built on. And ours? Turned out to be a lot of masking tape and memory. We divorced when Hannah was 2. No cheating, no scandal. Just eroded trust. Too many arguments about little things that weren't really about what they were about. She moved 10 minutes away. We split custody, kept things polite. And for 3 years, we did okay. Birthday parties, soccer games, joint doctor visits. I thought we were doing right by our daughter. Until the day Jessica pulled me aside, while Hannah blew out candles shaped like stars, and whispered those 10 words that dropped me into a different life. You should get a test. Her blood type doesn't match yours. I laughed, at first. A bitter, confused kind of laugh. Because what the hell kind of thing is that to say? But she didn't laugh back. She just looked at me like she'd already said too much, like some part of her had been waiting to say it, and another part wanted to stuff the words back into her throat. I asked her what she meant. She shrugged. Said the pediatrician had mentioned it in passing. Something about routine blood work. Just one of those offhand comments, nothing serious. Except it wasn't nothing. Because my blood type is O-negative, and you don't have to be a doctor to know O-negative can't magically produce an AB-positive child. It's not just unlikely. It's genetically impossible. The pediatrician didn't say it like it was a red flag. Just a passing note during routine blood work. Something about the Rh factor not lining up. Maybe they didn't know both our blood types. Or maybe they assumed one of us was adopted, or just didn't want to scare anyone. But the second Jessica said it out loud, everything inside me locked into place. I spent the rest of the party smiling like my face was glued that way, handing out cake, holding Hannah on my lap while she unwrapped presents. All the while, my mind screaming, "She's not yours. She's not yours. She's not yours." I didn't sleep that night. I sat on the edge of my bed, staring at the floor, the echo of my daughter's laugh still ringing in my ears. And I asked myself something I never thought I'd have to ask. What if I'm not her father? Not legally, not emotionally, biologically. And what the hell does that even mean? That night, I ordered a paternity test kit online. Overnight shipping. I didn't tell Jessica. I didn't tell anyone, because part of me didn't believe it. And another part was terrified that I did. The test came the next day. Plain brown box. No label to hint at the weight inside. Just a sterile kit, 2 swabs, 2 envelopes, a set of instructions I didn't need to read. I already knew how it worked. I'd looked it up 5 times the night before. All I had to do was collect her sample. Just 1 swab from the inside of her cheek. Easy. Harmless. Except nothing about it felt easy. Because how do you swab your daughter's cheek while wondering if she's your daughter? I didn't sleep that night either. I told Jessica I'd pick Hannah up from preschool and keep her overnight. Said I missed her, which was true. I always missed her. Hannah came running out the classroom door. Backpack bouncing, ponytail crooked, cheeks flushed from whatever chaos 5-year-olds get into at 2:30 in the afternoon. She hugged my leg and said, "Daddy, guess what? I made a jellyfish out of glitter and it has googly eyes. I smiled like my heart wasn't splitting in half. We got home, made spaghetti, built a pillow fort. She asked if we could have a campout in the living room like we used to when she was smaller. I said sure, why not? Because if this was all a mistake, if there was even a chance she wasn't mine, I wanted one more night of not knowing. One more night where I could pretend everything was still whole. After she fell asleep, I sat beside her, just watching her chest rise and fall. Her little hands curled under her chin. The way she snored, soft and steady. I knew every inch of this kid, every freckle, every cry, every weird little phrase she made up. How could she not be mine? But genetics don't care about memories. They don't care how many times you stayed up rocking a baby through the flu. They don't care how many boo-boos you kissed or bedtime stories you made up on the fly. So I swabbed her cheek. Gently, slowly. She stirred but didn't wake. Then I swabbed mine. I sealed both samples, labeled the envelopes, put them in the return pouch, and I sat on the couch holding that pouch like it might burn through my hands. Because whatever that test said, it was going to change everything. The wait was 3 days. 3 days of pretending. Pretending I wasn't jumping every time my phone buzzed. Pretending I wasn't scanning her face for signs of someone else's features. Pretending I wasn't staring at baby photos and wondering what I'd missed. On day 2, I called Jessica. She didn't answer, so I left a message. I need to know what you meant. I need you to be honest with me. No reply. Day 3, the email came through at 6:02 a.m. Subject line, your results are ready. I stared at it for a full 5 minutes before I clicked. It only took one line to break me. Probability of paternity, 0%. I read it again, and then I sat there, in the dark, as the sun came up over a world that didn't feel like mine anymore. She wasn't my daughter. Not by blood. Not by biology. Everything I thought I knew about my life. It cracked open like a dropped plate. And in that silence, one thought kept circling back, louder than all the rest. Jessica knew. She knew. And now I needed to hear her say it. I showed up at Jessica's door just after noon. No warning. No polite text. Just me, standing on her porch with a printed copy of the results in my hand and 3 days of silence ringing in my ears. She opened the door, saw the envelope, and didn't even flinch. Didn't ask what it was. Didn't pretend to be surprised. Just stepped aside and said, "You want to come in?" The living room still looked the same. Worn couch, toys in a basket by the TV, framed pictures of Hannah on the wall. One of them was from the hospital. Me holding her, swaddled tight. I shut like she was dreaming. I'd never loved anyone so instantly. I used to think that photo meant something permanent. Now I wasn't sure what any of it meant. I sat down. She stayed standing. "You read it?" I asked. She nodded. "I figured you'd do it. I need you to say it, Jess." Out loud. She looked away. I didn't. Finally, she said it. Quiet, but not unsure. "You're not her biological father." And just like that, the last string snapped. I asked her when she found out. She said it was early. Right after Hannah was born. There'd been some talk in the hospital, a nurse asking about blood types, something not lining up. At first, she brushed it off, said maybe someone had the wrong chart. But later, she started doing the math, realized the timeline was tighter than she'd admitted to either of us. "It was one night," she said. "Before we filed. I wasn't thinking. We were already sleeping in separate rooms. You were barely home. I thought it was over. And I made a mistake." She didn't say his name. I didn't ask. I just stared at the floor, trying to make sense of a world where I'd spent 5 years loving a child who, by DNA standards, wasn't mine. "But you let me name her," I said. "You let me sign the birth certificate. You were her father," she said, almost pleading. "You are. That doesn't change." I looked up at her, and for the first time since all this started, I didn't feel angry. I felt hollow. "Why didn't you tell me?" She sighed. "Because I didn't want to lose you. And because I didn't want to see you stop loving her." Then, quieter. "At first, I wasn't even sure. The timeline was a mess. I kept telling myself it was yours, that we were just off by a few weeks. I wanted to believe that. Needed to." She looked away. "By the time I started to wonder, you'd already fallen in love with her. I didn't know how to take that away. So I didn't. That hurt worse than the results. Like she thought my love for Hannah was something that could be broken by paperwork." I left without another word. Didn't slam the door. Didn't raise my voice. Just walked out with a sheet of paper in my hand and 5 years of memories pressed down in my chest like a weight I couldn't shake. Back home, I sat at the kitchen table, put the envelope down, pulled out my phone, scrolled through pictures, Hannah's first Halloween, her 3rd birthday, That blurry photo of her riding a tricycle in the driveway with her helmet on crooked and her mouth open in a full belly laugh. Every image said the same thing. She was mine. Maybe not by blood, but in every way that counted. And yet, now I had a choice. I could walk away. I could call a lawyer, start asking questions, undo what never should have been done. Or, I could be the man I told her I'd be the day she was born. The man who said, "Hi, it's me. I'm your dad." The man who never needed proof to love her. But I'll be honest, in that moment, I didn't know which man I was anymore. All I knew was this. She was 5. She didn't ask for any of this. And the only thing I had left to give her was the truth I chose next. The next time I saw Hannah, she ran straight into my arms like nothing had changed. Because to her, nothing had. She didn't know about blood types or DNA tests. She didn't know about hospital charts or whispered confessions in living rooms filled with old pain. She just knew I was Daddy, the man who made her pancakes in the shape of stars and let her fall asleep on his chest during movie nights. And God, I held her longer than usual that day, because a part of me wondered if I was allowed to. We went to the park, swung on the same squeaky swings we'd always used, fed ducks with crusts from her sandwich. She talked about school, about how her best friend was now her worst friend again, but probably not forever, and how her music teacher said she had excellent rhythm. She beamed when she said it, like it was the most important thing in the world. And the whole time, I was nodding, smiling, pretending I wasn't dying inside. Because every laugh she gave me felt like a gift I hadn't earned. I kept waiting for the moment, the question, the slip. Something like, "Mommy said I came from someone else?" Or, "Am I really yours?" But she didn't ask. She never even looked at me differently, because she didn't need a test to tell her who I was. That night, after I put her to bed, I stood in her doorway for a long time, just watching. And I realized something. I could walk away. Legally. Biologically. No judge in the country would stop me. But the damage wouldn't hit her right away. It would show up years later. In the way she hesitated to trust people. In the way she'd look in the mirror and wonder why the man who raised her decided she wasn't worth it anymore. I couldn't do that to her. No matter what Jessica did. No matter how deep the betrayal ran. This little girl had my heart before she ever had my name. And that wasn't going to change. The next day, I sat across from Jessica again. "I'm not going anywhere," I told her. She blinked, confused. You're staying involved?" "I'm not doing this for you," I said. "I'm doing it for her. Because she's still my daughter. She always will be." Jessica nodded slowly, like she wanted to believe me but didn't know if she could. "And I'm going to need something from you," I added. "Anything. The truth. From now on. No more silence. No more protecting me from pain. That's not your job. You lied to me for 5 years, Jess. I can't undo that. But I'm not going to let your lie destroy her sense of security." She looked down, ashamed. "I'll do better," she said. "I need more than words." I know. There was a pause between us. Heavy, but not hostile. Just the weight of two people who had broken something together, now trying to decide what could still be saved. Later that week, I sat with Hannah in the fort we built in the living room. I didn't tell her about the test. Not yet. She was too young. She didn't need that weight. But I did tell her this. That no matter what happens, no matter what changes, I will always be your dad. You know that, right? She looked up from her coloring book, smiled like it was the silliest question in the world. "Of course you are. You're the one who makes the best grilled cheese." Then she went back to coloring. And that was that. Not because it wasn't serious, but because kids don't need the science of love. They just need to feel it. I thought that would be the end of it. Thought I could put the truth in a box, label it handled, and move forward. Be the father Hannah already believed I was. But the thing about truth is, it doesn't like boxes. It seeps out through cracks. 2 weeks later, Hannah came home with a drawing. She'd made it at school. One of those all-about-my-family posters with stick figures and glitter and misspelled names that somehow still hit harder than any courtroom document. There were 3 people in the picture. Me, her, Jessica, and a 4th person, drawn in the top right corner. Small, off to the side. A man. No face. Just a brown scribble for hair. I asked her who that was. She said, "I don't know. Mommy said he's nobody." And just like that, the box split open again. I wanted to believe it was just a slip, that Jessica panicked in the moment, didn't know what to say, defaulted to silence dressed as dismissal. Old habits die hard, even when you promise yourself you'll be better. But that one word, nobody, echoed like a crack in the foundation we were just starting to rebuild. That night, after Hannah was asleep, I called Jessica, told her we needed to talk. Now, she came over, didn't even argue. We sat at my kitchen table, The same table where I'd signed the custody agreement. The same table where I'd once taught Hannah how to count using jelly beans. I slid the drawing across the table. She asked me who this was. I said, "And you told her he's nobody?" Jessica looked tired, older than I remembered, like the lie had finally caught up with her. She asked me why her hair doesn't look like mine, she said. She's 5. She's starting to notice things. So you told her there was someone else? I said. I didn't name him. I didn't tell her the whole story. I panicked. You don't get to panic. I snapped, louder than I meant to. You made this mess. And now you're dragging her into it one vague explanation at a time. She looked down. I didn't want to hurt you again. I laughed, not because it was funny, because it was insulting. It's not about me anymore. It's about her. And if she finds out from a stranger, or worse, figures it out herself, that I'm not her biological father, she'll question everything. Jessica nodded slowly. I know. I stared at her. It was one night, she said. Before we filed. I wasn't thinking. We were already sleeping in separate rooms. You were barely home. I thought it was over. And I made a mistake. For a second, I wondered if it was someone I didn't know. But then a thought flashed, a name I hadn't heard in years. Ryan Taylor. We used to work at the same firm. Same floor. Same coffee machine. He always had that smirk, like the world was in on some joke he wasn't telling me. Jessica used to laugh a little too easily when he was around. I told myself it was nothing, that I was overthinking it. Now I wasn't so sure. It was one night, she said again. After that huge fight we had. The one where you left and slept at your brother's. I remembered that fight. It was brutal. Words we didn't mean, said too sharply. I came home the next day, tail between my legs, holding an apology in the form of takeout and wine. And I'd never known that while I was cooling off, she was already moving on. Does he know? I asked. Jessica shook her head. He left the company before I found out. I didn't tell him. I didn't want him involved. I stared at her like I didn't recognize the person sitting across from me. You decided that for everyone. I didn't want him in her life. And you didn't think I deserved to know either? Silence. She didn't have a defense. Not one that mattered. I'm going to talk to a family counselor, I said. We need a plan. One that protects her, but doesn't keep lying. Because she will ask again. And next time, nobody won't be good enough. Jessica nodded. Finally. I'll go. Whatever you think is best. As she got up to leave, she turned back to me. Do you still see her the same? I looked at her. Looked past her. To you? She's a secret, I said. To me? She's my daughter. That's not changing. Jessica didn't answer. She just nodded once and walked out the door. That night, I sat in Hannah's room again, watched her sleep, and I promised her, not out loud, not for anyone else to hear, but in the quiet way only fathers do when no one's watching, that no matter how she got here, she'd never have to wonder who stayed. A month later, we sat in the counselor's office. Me, Jessica, a woman named Michelle who had kind eyes and a soft voice that somehow made hard truths feel survivable. We weren't there for custody. We weren't fighting over weekends or holidays. We were there for Hannah. Because the lie had a shelf life, and that shelf was already cracking. Michelle asked questions. She didn't pry, she guided. Asked what Hannah knew, what she'd asked, how we'd responded. I told her about the drawing. Jessica talked about the hair question. And then Michelle asked the one thing I hadn't been ready to hear out loud. When do you want her to know? The room got very quiet. Jessica looked at me, like she was waiting for me to take the lead. And I realized. I had to. Not because I had all the answers, but because this was my chance to show my daughter who I really was. Not just the man who stayed, but the man who stood up. The plan was simple, but delicate. We'd tell her in pieces, over time. No courtroom drama. No big reveal. Just age-appropriate truth, layered slowly. The idea that families come in all kinds. That love isn't always tied to blood. That sometimes people make mistakes, and the people who really love you, they show up anyway. And when she's older, old enough to understand biology, betrayal, forgiveness, we'll tell her everything. Every single thing. Because I'd rather she hear it from me, with love, than piece it together alone, with hurt. Weeks passed. We started small. One night, while we were looking through baby photos, she pointed at the one from the hospital again. Did I look like you when I was born? She asked. I took a breath, smiled gently. Not exactly, I said. But that didn't matter to me. She looked confused. Why? Because love doesn't always come from matching noses or eyes, I said. Sometimes, it just shows up and stays. She tilted her head, thought about it, then said, like when you stayed with me when I was sick. Exactly like that. And just like that, she went back to coloring. No drama. No fear. Just a kid, safe in her world. Jessica's been different since then. Softer, maybe. Quieter. I think she's trying to forgive herself. I don't know if she ever fully will. That's her road, not mine. As for Ryan, I haven't reached out. Not yet. Maybe someday. But for now, I'm not looking to dig up old ghosts just to satisfy curiosity. If the day comes when Hannah wants to meet him, we'll cross that bridge with honesty and caution and a lot of love. Because that's what this story became in the end. Not a scandal, not a betrayal, but a lesson in choosing love, even when the world says you don't have to. Last week, Hannah asked if she could change her middle name. Said she didn't like the one on her birth certificate. Said it didn't feel like hers. I asked what she wanted instead. She said, Danielle. Like you. But for a girl. I had to turn away so she wouldn't see my eyes. Because that name, the one she made hers, wasn't proof of biology. It was proof of something better, that no test can measure. She chose me, too. And no result, no man, no missing bloodline, can take that away.